I never imagined that after 12 years steering every pulse of Halden and Sons logistics, I'd be escorted out by a computer program. It was a crisp autumn morning when I stepped into the glass-walled conference room, my heart thrumming with the same steady rhythm it had for over a decade. Sunlight danced across the polished table, casting prisms of light on my worn leather portfolio. Opposite me sat Oliver Kane, arms folded, his gaze fixed on the screen behind him. "This new OptiRoute software makes your position redundant," he said, voice flat. "We can save nearly $200,000 each year." My name is Ethan Monroe. I'm 38, and I've spent the better part of my adult life building this company's logistics network from the ground up. I nodded, as if corporate finance reports could erase the late nights tracking shipments through blizzards, the weekends I spent writing code to reroute trucks around downed bridges, the frantic calls I'd handled during hurricanes threatening our southern corridors. "It's 20% more efficient than manual management," Oliver continued, not daring to meet my eyes. "Your salary and benefits form the bulk of that figure. We'll need you to train Liam Brooks on the remaining processes during your notice period." Liam was 23 and fresh out of college, an ideal candidate for pushing buttons and following algorithmic directives. I swallowed a lump in my throat, forcing my voice to remain calm. "No problem," I said, sliding the severance letter across the table. 2 weeks' pay for every year served. Fair, on paper. But the paper couldn't replace the relationships I'd fostered. Later that afternoon, I packed my office in silence. I paused over a framed photograph of my daughter's first dance recital. My son's baseball glove sat on a shelf, scuffed from years of Sunday games. I slipped those into my bag, along with the blue binder I'd kept meticulously updated. Client quirks, back road shortcuts, emergency contingency plans. Routes that shaved hours off deliveries, because I knew Officer Caldwell set up speed traps on Route 58 every Thursday. Schedules I'd aligned perfectly around the Coldwater Meats dock manager's lunch break. Agriculture runs I'd routed to avoid diesel fumes on the Morningstar produce organic corridors. That folder went into my satchel. Nobody asked about it. My co-workers drifted by with awkward handshakes and empty promises to keep in touch. Only Jenna from dispatch lingered. "Who am I supposed to call when everything goes sideways now?" she asked, voice thick. "You've got OptiRoute," I reminded her gently. She rolled her eyes. "That thing can't handle Murphy Creamery's temperature-sensitive tanks. They can't sit more than 30 minutes, or the valves start leaking." I smiled sadly and patted her shoulder. "I'm sure they'll figure it out." Walking past the boardroom, I caught a glimpse of Oliver pitching colorful charts to the executive team, bar graphs of cost savings, pie charts of ROI. I wondered if they'd considered the price of losing a decade's worth of trust with clients from Austin to Helena. The door was glass, but I didn't slam it. I just walked out, settled my box of belongings in the passenger seat of my truck, and drove off the company lot. My heart was heavy, but my mind was already ticking. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't the end. It was a beginning. I first joined Halden & Sons when William Halden himself hired me in a cramped garage-turned-warehouse with just 8 beat-up rigs and grand ambitions. He told me, "Our strength is in relationships and reliability. Technology shifts, but people don't." Those words became my mantra as I designed dispatch systems, coded early tracking modules, and forged personal bonds with clients who trusted me implicitly. When William retired 5 years ago, his son Trevor took over. Fresh from business school, he preached disruption and leveraging automation. I watched the consultants arrive, the budget cuts roll out, the glowing reports on efficiency improvements. I kept my head down, focused on my work. I told myself that no software could replace the nuance I'd learned through years of problem-solving and genuine connection. My wife, Sophia, spotted the writing on the wall before I did. "They're phasing you out," she said one evening, concern in her voice. "You should update your resume." I waved it off. This system still needs human oversight. But the boardroom presentations, once delivered by me, were now handled by IT. Emails to Trevor went unanswered. Oliver made fleet decisions without even looping me in. 2 weeks before the meeting that ended my career, I got a call from Lucas Whitman at Greystone Transport, Holden's chief rival. "Just checking in," he said casually. "If you ever want to grab coffee, let me know." I thanked him and declined. Loyalty was everything to me. The morning I was fired, Sophia wasn't surprised when I called from the parking lot. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Take some time," I said. "Figure things out." That night, after the kids were tucked in, I opened my blue binder. These were the routes OptiRoute would never comprehend. How to navigate around weekly street fairs in Old Town that snarled traffic. Why Lakeview Produce insisted on deliveries before dawn, even if the software suggested afternoon runs. How Mr. Benson always waved me through the load gate at Coldwater when he saw it was me, because he trusted me. I dialed Lucas Whitman. 2 weeks later, I found myself in a vinyl booth at Harper's Diner, coffee steaming in front of me, my laptop open. I'd been tracking Halden's deliveries through old contacts still at client sites. The picture was bleak. 3 late creamery shipments in 10 days. A Silverbrook meats load, left unrefrigerated for 45 minutes. Autumn Grove produces lettuce ruined on the industrial bypass I always avoided. The new system was unraveling the network I'd built, and I felt a pang of guilt and a flash of vindication. A text from Jenna buzzed. "Complete disaster today. 3 trucks at same dock. Murphy's delayed 2 hours. They're furious." Then from Joe, one of our veteran drivers. "Got rerouted through downtown Houston at rush hour. Lost 90 minutes. No contact for overrides." I didn't respond. Not my circus anymore. But I logged each failure in my spreadsheet. The diner door chimed. Lucas slid into the booth. "Thanks for coming," he said, flagging the waitress. "I've been hoping you'd call." I closed my laptop. "I'm not here to burn bridges." Lucas shook his head. "We use automation too, but as a tool, not a replacement. Algorithms don't build relationships, Ethan. They don't know why the Morrisons insist on fresh cream deliveries first thing Monday, even if Wednesday is more efficient. We need someone who understands the why, not just the what." I studied him over the rim of my coffee cup. "What are you offering?" "Consulting to start. Maybe more permanent down the road." The thought of trading 12 years of institutional knowledge for lines of code made me uneasy. But the smarter move was clear. Lucas would pay me to map those nuances, to rebuild the system I'd created. I agreed. 1 month into my contract with Greystone, my phone rang. Oliver's name flickered on the screen. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight. "Clients are asking for you by name." I leaned back in my home office chair, watching my children play tag in the backyard. "I don't work for Holden anymore," I reminded him. He was quiet for a beat. "The transition hasn't gone smoothly. We'd like to bring you back as a consultant. Help us fix some issues." I rubbed my chin. Between Greystone's demand and Holden's desperation, I held all the cards. "Send me an offer," I said, placing the call on hold. Sophia found me still seated an hour later. "Did they call?" I nodded. "Are you tempted?" I was. I'd built that network. My reputation was at stake. Maybe I could help both companies survive this digital upheaval. The next morning, I returned to Holden's headquarters, now an unfamiliar monument of glass and steel. A new receptionist barely looked up as she directed me to the 3rd-floor conference room. Trevor and Oliver greeted me with tight smiles. Daniel Brooks fidgeted in his seat. "Ethan," Trevor began, extending a hand. "Appreciate you coming in." "Let's get to it," I replied. Oliver opened his laptop. "The system works as designed. but it's not accounting for client-specific requirements. Silverbrook's strict temperature windows, Autumn Grove's route hazards, the timing quirks at Murphy's cream transfer stations. Daniel blinked. How did you know about those issues? I allowed myself a small smile. I spent 12 years learning them. Trevor cleared his throat. We'd like you to document these considerations so we can program them in. I leaned forward. So, you can finish replacing me. Trevor's jaw tightened. We're offering a very competitive consulting rate. I looked at the three of them. Trevor, who once championed disruption. Oliver, who never met my eyes. Daniel, whose familiarity with the routes barely scratched the surface. No, I said simply. Trevor blinked. Excuse me? I stood, gathering my coat. Through the window, I saw the mid-morning sun glint off the headquarters. My knowledge isn't a commodity to be downloaded, I said. It's a relationship. And with that, I walked out again, this time on my own terms. Ethan settled back into the high-backed leather chair, its worn grain pressing against the fabric of his jacket. Across from him, at the long mahogany conference table, Oliver Kane's posture stiffened. The glow of the overhead LEDs cast sharp angles on Trevor Halden's impassive face through the glass partition behind them. The air smelled faintly of brewed coffee and polished wood, an atmosphere of uneasy negotiation. Ethan, Oliver began, voice low. We've made a very generous offer. He leaned forward, fingertips tapping a staccato rhythm on the tabletop. 2 weeks at our highest consultant rate. We just need you to codify your unique client knowledge into our system. Ethan let a breath escape slowly. He rose and squared his shoulders. Oliver, relationships aren't something I can just transfer to software, he said evenly. You're asking me to compress 12 years of trust, nuance, and on-the-ground problem-solving into a few structured data entries. That's not reasonable. It takes years of face-to-face interaction to learn what each client truly needs. Trevor's jaw tightened, and he exchanged a glance with Oliver. We understand the value you bring, Trevor said, voice carefully controlled. But as a consultant, you're still bound to confidentiality. We've been informed you're working with Greystone Transport now. At the mention of Greystone, Ethan felt a flicker of satisfaction. He met Trevor's gaze without flinching. Yes, I'm consulting for Lucas Whitman over there, he replied. But I've shared no proprietary Holden data with him. Yet now you're worried about conflicts of interest, while simultaneously demanding I hand over every shred of institutional know-how. Trevor's face hardened. We'll be monitoring closely, he warned, and we'll reach out to our clients to ensure no unauthorized solicitations occur. Ethan paused in the doorway, hand on the metal frame. He offered a parting suggestion. Perhaps you'd do better focusing on keeping your existing clients happy, instead of policing where I work next. Then he turned, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. The text from Jenna Rivers arrived just 3 weeks later. Ethan stood beside a bank of refrigerated trailers at Greystone's main yard in New Haven, clipboard in hand. Ethan, you won't believe this. Her voice was hushed, urgent, like she ducked into an unused loading bay to conceal her call. Silverbrook Meats just pulled their contract. Entirely. They're gone. Ethan set his clipboard on the hood of a delivery van. What happened? 3 shipments spoiled, Jenna replied bitterly. Frost damaged. Their CEO called Trevor Holden personally. It got ugly. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, picturing the gleaming stainless steel racks at Silverbrook's plant, the precise temperature windows he'd engineered. What about Maplewood Creamery and Autumn Grove Produce? Maplewood's starting to make noise too. Autumn Grove called me yesterday. The optimization software is performing as designed, but that design doesn't include what clients actually need. Jenna laughed, a hollow, rueful sound. Exactly. It's flawless on cost reduction, perfectly tuned to shave cents off the bottom line. But it doesn't know to reroute around Friday farmers' markets for Autumn Grove, or to prioritize Maplewood's dairy tanks so their pressure valves don't leak. Ethan watched a forklift lift a pallet of frozen goods, the soft beeping punctuating the air. Lucas Whitman appeared at his elbow, arms crossed over a Greystone polo. "Everything all right?" Lucas asked. Ethan gestured toward his phone screen. "Halden's hemorrhaging accounts. Silverbrook, Maplewood, Autumn Grove. They're all coming our way." Lucas's grin was quick and sharp. "I thought you'd like that news." Ethan nodded. "I anticipated this scenario. Last week I submitted a proposal to Silverbrook on our behalf. Competitive rates, dedicated service oversight. Your standard routing specialist package." Lucas clapped him on the shoulder. "That's why you're here." That evening at Harper's Diner, Ethan sat across from William Silver, the CEO of Silverbrook Meats. The aroma of seared steak and garlic butter filled the small private booth. William cut into his prime rib with a measured force, his crisp white shirt catching the low pendant light. "You know how much those 3 frozen shipments cost us?" William asked between bites. "Thousands in wasted product, and the board is furious." Ethan nodded sympathetically. "Automated systems excel at data analysis, sir, but specialized requirements often fall through the cracks." William's scowl deepened. Trevor insisted the software would learn from its mistakes, yet it kept repeating them. "What did Halden say when you left?" William let out a harsh laugh. "Oh, he blamed the drivers. Offered us a discount rather than admitting the system was flawed." He jabbed the steak fork at Ethan. "You saw this coming, didn't you?" Ethan lifted a glass of water. "I knew the variables you rely on. Rail schedules, dock protocols, temperature windows. Couldn't be programmed without comprehensive oversight." William leaned back, eyes bright with relief. "Your proposal mentioned a dedicated routing specialist. That's you?" "I am," Ethan confirmed. "I can start immediately." A faint smile flickered on William's lips. "Then let's get started." Before dawn the next day, Lisa Morgan from Maplewood Creamery called. "Ethan," she said, urgency in her tone. "We're having serious issues with Halden. And I hear you're with Greystone now." Over the following week, Autumn Grove Produce and 2 smaller accounts reached out, none solicited by Ethan. They all knew exactly whom to call. He informed Lucas of the incoming business. Lucas folded his arms. "Looks like we need to finalize your permanent role." That Friday, Ethan drove past Halden's headquarters. Through the reflective glass facade, he saw staff huddled under fluorescent lights, scrambling to resolve crises. A pang of sympathy hit him for the employees caught in the fallout. But then he recalled Oliver's dismissive words. "This software makes your position redundant." He didn't seek revenge, but he certainly hadn't turned it down. 3 months after his termination, Greystone had signed 6 former Holden accounts, including the 3 largest: Silverbrook, Maplewood, and Autumn Grove. Ethan's new office overlooked Greystone's bustling yard, an orchestra of trucks, forklifts, and trailers, moving in precise coordination. He traced delivery routes on a digital map, refining schedules with the human insights only he possessed. One morning, Lucas appeared at his open door. "Just got off the phone with Harrington Foods," he said with a half smile. "They're jumping ship from Halden. That was their 4th biggest account." Ethan looked up. Harrington was reliable, good people. Lucas nodded. "They'll be great here. Are you free for lunch? The executive team wants to discuss your promotion to Senior Logistics Director." As they walked to the conference room, Lucas lowered his voice. "Word is, Halden's laid off 15% of their staff." Ethan paused by a row of framed project photos, teams he once led. "Those are good people," he murmured. "They're hiring 3 more consultants to patch the system," Lucas added, shaking his head. "Too little, too late." Over a productive lunch, Ethan accepted the senior logistics director role. Back in his office, Jenna waited, looking both hopeful and uneasy. "Hope you don't mind," she said, glancing toward security who waved her through when she mentioned Ethan's name. "They laid off 8 people from dispatch yesterday. I'm still here, but are you hiring?" Ethan studied her determined expression. "Yes. Let me introduce you to HR. Over the next fortnight, he onboarded 3 former Holden employees, stalwart professionals who deserved better than being casualties of a flawed disruption play." One evening, as Ethan locked up and headed for his car, he found Trevor Holden leaning against the passenger side door of his truck. Trevor's tailored suit was rumpled, and dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. "You've taken half our clients," Trevor said quietly. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. "Your clients chose service over software. You built a system without the human element." Trevor looked away, voice heavy. 63 families losing their jobs. This is on you, Ethan." Ethan met his gaze. "No, it's on you and Oliver for believing technology could replace people who understand the business." Trevor's shoulders slumped. After a beat, he straightened. "We're filing for Chapter 11 next week," he confessed. "We'd like Greystone to acquire our remaining assets, equipment, some staff, a few smaller accounts. It'd cost less than watching the company collapse." Ethan considered him in the fading streetlight. "I'll discuss it with Lucas." As Trevor walked away, Ethan's phone chimed. A text from William Silver. "Perfect delivery today. Better than ever. Thanks for taking charge of our account." A swell of satisfaction rose in Ethan's chest, but it was tempered by the memory of loyal colleagues caught in Holden's downfall. The next morning, Ethan presented Trevor's proposal to Greystone's executive board. Acquiring Holden's remaining infrastructure and personnel is not just strategic, it's ethical, he argued. "These employees didn't cause this collapse." Lucas nodded. "Draft a detailed acquisition plan." That weekend, Ethan drafted a comprehensive proposal. Valuations, staffing integrations, and client transition strategies. He did it not for revenge, but because it was the right move for all stakeholders. 6 months after his dismissal, Ethan stood in the lobby of what was once Holden and Sons Logistics headquarters. The old logo had been removed. In its place gleamed Greystone's blue and silver emblem. Workers from both companies navigated hallways newly lined with Greystone signage. Oliver Kane approached, extending his hand. "Ethan, thanks for meeting me here." Ethan shook it, noting the tension in Oliver's shoulders. "Lucas said you wanted to talk." They slipped into a small conference room and closed the door. Oliver settled into a chair, gaze flicking to the bustling lobby beyond the glass. "I've been offered a role on the transition team," Oliver said quietly. "Reporting to you." Ethan drew in a breath. "This isn't personal," he said, "but your decision to replace me came from the top down." Oliver's shoulders eased. "I was following orders." Ethan leaned forward. "We both know it wasn't the software that failed. It was forgetting that logistics is about people. Algorithms can optimize distances and costs, but they can't grasp human variables." They paused as distant footsteps and voices filtered through the walls, the sound of new teams learning to work together under Greystone's banner. Ethan stood by the window, watching forklifts load pallets and drivers wave familiar greetings. He inhaled the crisp morning air, reflecting on how far he'd come since that fateful day when a computer program tried to make him redundant. He hadn't set out for revenge. He'd simply stayed true to the principle William Holden once taught him. Technology is a tool, not a replacement for human knowledge, trust, and relationships. And now, guiding a unified company, he felt the quiet certainty that actions and integrity always have consequences. I watched Oliver Kane's eyes brighten with a mixture of relief and cautious optimism as he looked up from the folder I'd just slid across the conference table. His crisp gray suit was a few sizes too big, a visual echo of the uncertainty that had gripped him since Greystone Transport's acquisition of Halden and Sons Logistics. The polished oak tabletop reflected our images back at us, two halves of a company reshaped by necessity and insight. "So," Oliver began, voice hesitant, "where do I fit in the new structure?" I leaned forward, resting my palms on the folder's smooth manila surface. "I'm naming this role Operations Coordinator," I said, offering him a pen. "You'll work closely with the team I'm building, integrating human expertise with technology that supports, rather than replaces, our judgment." Oliver picked up the pen and flipped through the offer letter inside. His brow softened as he ran his finger down the page. "This is more than I expected," he admitted, pausing as though tasting the words. I stood and folded my arms, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's exactly what the position is worth," I told him. "Technology changes. People don't. Your experience, your rapport with our clients, those are irreplaceable." As we rose from our chairs, the conference room doors swung open. Trevor Holden emerged from the lobby's glass doors, flanked by Greystone's legal team. He paused at the threshold, and our eyes met across the gleaming marble floor. No words were necessary. The outcome of Holden and Sons' misguided bet on automation spoke volumes. 1 year after Oliver first told me my position was redundant, I stood in Greystone's expanded control center, a vast room lined with floor-to-ceiling monitors and humming servers. Each screen displayed live route optimizations, alongside driver notes and client preferences, visual proof of the hybrid system we'd built. Where Halden's software had once delivered raw cost savings data, ours now highlighted the human elements that keep a logistics network breathing: alternating temperature thresholds, preferred loading docks, and real-time rerouting suggestions based on nuanced local knowledge. Elaine Rivers approached, tablet in hand. She'd been through hell and back during Halden's collapse. Late nights at the dispatch console, fielding panicked calls from clients. Now she wore a confident smile. "Murphy Dairy just sent over their forecasted shipments for the next quarter," she reported. "They're projecting a 15% increase." I nodded, recalling the fine balance of pressure valves we'd documented years ago. "Excellent," I said. "Make sure James knows about their valve pressure sensitivity. If those tanks sit too long, the leakage risk doubles." "She's already on it," Elaine replied. "He's handling their account while Sophia and the kids are away next week." A smile tugged at my lips. "My first real vacation in years," I said, glancing toward the control room's panoramic window. Yellowstone National Park. Just me, Sophia, and the kids. The irony isn't lost on me. Later that morning, Lucas Whitman, my counterpart in Greystone's executive suite, joined me in the control center. His crisp navy blazer matched his upbeat demeanor. "I just got off the phone with the board," he announced, clapping me on the shoulder. "Quarterly numbers are off the charts. They specifically mentioned our client retention rates and the new accounts we've landed. You've more than vindicated your instincts." I leaned against a console, watching a real-time map track a half-dozen refrigerated trailers bound for Coldstream meats. "We haven't just kept all the former Holden clients," I said. "We've added a dozen new ones who've heard about our reliability-first approach." Lucas beamed. Human-centered logistics was a gamble, but it's paying off. That afternoon, I walked the loading dock area, where Sam, one of our veteran drivers, was briefing the warehouse crew. He wore a high-visibility vest over a warm flannel shirt, a patchwork of years spent crisscrossing state lines. I stopped beside him as he consulted a laminated route sheet. "All set for the morning run, Sam?" I asked. Sam nodded, tapping his truck's tire with a gloved hand. "Got the route plan to avoid that construction on Highway 16, despite what the GPS keeps suggesting." I smiled. "Trust your judgment. The software is there to help, not decide." He grinned and gave a thumbs up. "Always do." As I made my way to the parking lot at day's end, I paused to look back at the facility's steel and glass exterior. The same software that was supposed to make my role redundant had ultimately proven how some things simply cannot be automated. Relationships, experience, and the power of judgment. That evening, I settled into my home office to write a message to Sophia. The morning sun still lingered in the western sky, brushing the hills beyond our neighborhood with golden light. I reflected on how getting fired had set me on a path to a far better position, one that valued not just my technical know-how, but the deep client connections I'd forged. Better compensation, a work-life balance that actually included my children, and a team of colleagues who'd been casualties of Halden's ill-fated experiment, now thriving under Greystone's banner. I sighed, then closed my laptop. Slipping out to the deck, I stretched my arms wide and breathed in the warm summer air. Vindication had an unfamiliar taste, sweeter than any triumph, sweeter even than revenge. Early the next morning, I found Oliver Kane seated at a high-top table in our cafeteria, steaming mug of coffee between his hands. He looked up with genuine warmth. "Morning," he greeted. "Morning," I replied, sliding into the seat opposite him. "How's the new role treating you?" He took a slow sip, then set the mug down. "Honestly, it's the first time in years I feel like my contributions matter. Working with your team, it's collaborative, focused on relationships, not just numbers." I leaned back. That was the whole point. Algorithms are powerful, but they need the human perspective to align them with real-world needs. Oliver nodded. "Thank you for that opportunity." I smiled. "You earned it." Throughout Greystone's facilities, the transformation was palpable. New photographs lined the hallways, teams huddling over route simulations, dispatchers celebrating on-time delivery milestones, drivers receiving personalized itinerary packets, tailored to each client's quirks. The old Halden and Sons logo no longer hung in those halls. In its place, Greystone's emblem, blue and silver, glowed under the LED canopy. Beneath it, a plaque read, "In partnership with people." I paused to read those words every morning, a reminder of the path we'd chosen. A month later, one of our smaller clients, Greenfield Produce, invited me to tour their organic greenhouse facility. I spent the day walking between rows of hydroponic lettuce, listening to their operations manager explain sensitivity to diesel fumes. We adjusted our route algorithms to include low-emission corridors, flagged by driver feedback. When we rode back to the control center, I saw Lucas waiting with a grin. "They loved the greenhouse adjustments," he said. "Another contract renewal, plus an expansion into new distribution lines." I clapped him on the back. That's how you blend technology with relationships. By the time my vacation rolled around, I packed the family car with camping gear and children's backpacks, heading west toward Yellowstone's geysers and canyons. As Sophia navigated over gravel roads, she glanced back at me in the rearview mirror. "You look happy," she said softly. I squeezed her hand. "I am. Losing my old job was the best thing that ever happened." She smiled, and our children pressed their faces against the windows, eyes wide with wonder at the passing scenery. When I returned from Yellowstone, refreshed and recharged, Greystone had already welcomed 3 more former Holden employees into our expanded operations team. Stalwart colleagues who'd been let go when their roles were declared redundant. They settled into their new offices with gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. On my first day back, I gathered the full operations staff in the control center. Rows of monitors glowed behind me. Desks were arranged in a semicircle. I cleared my throat. "Team," I began, "we've proven that logistics is not just about the lowest cost algorithm or the slickest software. It's about understanding people, our clients and our drivers, and empowering technology to serve their needs. You each bring unique insight to this mission. Let's keep pushing forward together." They applauded, faces bright with enthusiasm. In that moment, I knew we'd built something far more resilient than any standalone program, a human-centered logistics network that could adapt, learn, and grow. Later that afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the warehouse windows, I strolled past the loading docks one more time. A driver waved. A dispatcher gave me a thumbs up. I paused to admire a row of refrigerated trailers lined up like silent sentinels, each bearing the Greystone logo and a mission-critical itinerary printed with exacting detail. The journey from being told I was redundant to leading a thriving, people-first operation had been anything but straightforward. But standing here, watching forklifts hum, seeing tablet-equipped supervisors confer with drivers over route adjustments, I felt a profound sense of vindication. Not of revenge, but of principle. Human expertise matters, and relationships cannot be coded away. As I turned toward the exit, preparing to head home for dinner with Sophia and the kids, I realized that what I'd found in losing my old job was something far greater than I could have imagined. A renewed belief in the power of people, and the knowledge that sometimes the boldest move is to trust in the irreplaceable value of human connection. And that was worth more than any software could ever promise.